Thank you for the introduction. I think I can still hear myself, so if the mic could be muted, please. Okay, cool. Sounds good. First off, thank you so much for coming for this lecture, and I sincerely apologize for not being present over there. Reggie was supposed to do the talk, and due to some last-minute changes, he couldn't make it, so sorry for that. I still have, hopefully, a pretty good lineup of content for you guys, so it's going to be worth your time. Feel free to interrupt me anytime during the talk, and I'm going to switch now to the deck and turn off my camera. All right. Okay, I hope everyone can see the first slide. So I'm going to get started first. The talk today is about Angry Birds 2, our journey. During the last 2 years, we've seen phenomenal growth. And as you would have noticed, we've taken this product from a regular casual game to a more mid-core title with a top grossing position. And this talk is going to focus more about the features we built, our thought process behind it, and the impact that some of these features that we made have had on our economy. So to tell you a story, I'd like to first jump a bit to the past. So back in 2015, when we launched this product, it was predominantly a saga-driven progression game. And progression was linear, so we had a bunch of tutorial levels, birds unlocked as you progressed, and then we had a wave of boss levels, and difficulty kind of increased progressively. So that was one part of the game, and we also had something called as the arena at that point. And this is where we had probably one of the coolest features that we have today in the game, and that's your flock. So if you look at a screenshot, you can actually see that the game has 7 birds, and you can level up these birds. So what we had at that point was a pretty much vanilla version of the game, and we were on a content treadmill. Players, it was not very obvious to the player at that point that, hey, I can actually level up my birds, and they are indeed a progression vector. Leveling up birds have an impact. And part of the problem was mainly because this whole feature was hidden in one corner button, which is the nest with eggs on top right. So as we went through the global launch, we had a surge of new users, and we hit a point where eventually we were starting to see player frustration. So players were not engaging as much as we had hoped. And naturally, because it's a linear progression map, the grind was getting pretty tiresome. So difficulty would increase after a few levels, and then players would fail. And then there was nothing much to do after a point, because once you hit a difficulty wall, then you need to keep trying to pass that level. So while thinking about the problem, one challenge that we had is obviously the linear progression. Another challenge also was that we kept adding a lot of new content and new features to the end of our saga map. So unless players progressed further to that point, they were not experiencing all the cool new stuff that we were adding to the game. So there was entirely another set of challenges that we faced. So one of the first things that we came in mind is we wanted to introduce a new feature that would give players a break from the regular saga progression. And that came in the form of something called the daily challenge. So the idea behind this was our game has 7 birds, and we have 7 days of the week. So it made sense to pretty much have a feature where every day of the week, one of our beloved birds would come and introduce a new challenge. And the levels were pretty much taken from the entire saga map. So at that point, we had roughly about 1,000 odd levels, and very few players had gone all the way up to the 1,000th level. So this feature also allowed us to introduce all our content to new players quite early on. And another interesting thing with this feature was that players were not able to understand the progression with birds. So we were able to offer rewards over here to help them kind of get that flow and that meaning. So to explain that, I'm just going to switch back to the previous slide. So if you look at the nest screenshot over here, you're seeing bird cards. And the way you level up a bird is basically by collecting feathers. So red bird has red feathers, Chuck has yellow feathers, and so on. So what we did with the daily challenge feature basically is give out more rewards. So the leveling up feature was more in your face and obvious to the player. So aside from this, Arena was another part of the game that was pretty strong for us. So Arena was basically unlocked roughly around level 40. And what the players did was compete in a weekly tournament. And if you finish top three, you move to the next league. And if you finish at the bottom three, you get demoted. So we did see players engaged over there, but the engagement was mostly towards the end of the tournament, so towards the weekend. And we wanted to figure out a way to kind of make this a bit more even and more engaging. What we saw with Daily Challenge is giving out more rewards in the form of feathers helped convey to our players that leveling up birds is a progression vector. So we kind of continued on that front and introduced a feature called Winning Streak. So the idea here was basically every time you play an arena game and you win, you're on a streak. And the higher your streak, the better your rewards. So this was another feature that we did towards the end of 2016. And what we saw was pretty phenomenal at that point. So let me explain this chart. So this is basically our gem economy. That's our hard currency. And the left bar denotes when we launched where players spent most of the gems. So they were spending it on Saga, and then they were spending it in the arena. With the introduction of Daily Challenge, we saw a small spike in gem spend, and that's represented by the second bar. With the arena win streak, we saw an even bigger jump in the arena engagement. So players were really taking on to the feature. One, that it was a new way to play the game. Second is they were getting a lot more rewards that enabled them to progress further. So what we did pretty much at that point was, since we knew these features were working fine, we introduced another feature called King Pig Panic, and that's kind of what you see on the right sidebar. So King Pig Panic is nothing but another version of a daily challenge, a harder version to say. So as soon as players finish the daily challenge, they are presented with a similar set of levels, but this time it's a boss pig. And that pretty much took our gem economy over the roof, and we got about 4x increase in spend. So at this point, this was around mid or late 2016, we were already seeing a lot of improvements in our game coming from the meta. And the next logical step for us was to introduce hats. We've always wanted to do this, but we weren't fully sure of players taking on to the bird progression as a meaningful thing to do. But now that we knew that was working, we introduced something called as hats. So the way hats work in Angry Birds is every bird has something called as a bird power. So if you equip a hat, you get a specific score multiplier, and then the bird card itself has a score multiplier. And as you collect hats, you complete a hat set. So once you get 7 hats for every bird, you also level up your slingshot. So all the bird power did is basically give you a score boost. And this worked really well for us because once the score boost, once players were leveling up their birds, they were actually able to progress higher in the arena and other parts of the game simply because they got much better scores overall. So following up on this, so what we've been seeing so far is meta features are working perfect for us. And we're also seeing that giving out more rewards in the form of feathers are helping players understand that the progression is not just in Saga, but it's outside of it. It's in the form of leveling up your birds, your flock. So late December, we introduced something called as Tower of Fortune. And the thought process behind this one specifically was pretty much everything that you did in Angry Birds 2 up until this point is play levels, destroy your towers, kill pigs, and then if you win a level, you get a star or you get feathers or whatever. And The challenge with this is it can get pretty monotonous after a point, because with all the features that we have, be it Saga, be it Daily Challenge, be it Arena, everything that the player is doing end of the day is playing a bunch of levels, beating them, and getting a reward out of it. So we wanted to introduce something that's a bit more fast, snappy, something that players can quickly do in between sessions. And the answer to that was a feature called Tower of Fortune. So how this works is you start every day, a player gets a chance at the tower, and you start by being presented with 4 cards. Players don't know what's in those cards, so they need to tap it. And the rewards can be either feathers, gems, pearls, or it could be a pig. And the catch is, if it's a pig that's there, the pig is going to steal every reward that you've earned so far. And the objective for the player is to keep going higher and higher. And the higher the floor, the better the reward. And as you might have guessed, the impact of this was pretty phenomenal. So what we saw with this specific feature is, one, it was super engaging. Players were really taking onto it. But the more important aspect is this feature pretty much helped players to also get more meaningful rewards in a shorter span. So for players that were also coming new to the game or that have been around, rather than grinding through all the other features on a daily basis to get feathers, they could now go to the tower and really progress higher. And if they progress fast enough, they're going to get enough feathers to level up their flock. So at this point, what we realized is we've got a lot of great meta features. We introduced the daily challenge. We've got the King Pig Panic. We had the Arena win streak, and now the Tower of Fortune. All this is great, but we still haven't solved one fundamental problem that we had, which is the focus was still on Saga. So when you start the game, players were still taken to the Saga map, and all these cool features were pretty much presented in the form of icons all around the Saga map. And what was clear with player engagement is that the progression was moving more towards this being about your birds, about your flock, and not just Saga. So what we did in Feb this year was pretty much start with a new home screen. So today, when you start Angry Birds 2, what you see is basically your flock. And with this, what we're trying to establish is pretty much that the focus for you as a player is to build your flock. The higher your flock, the better your skills, and the more faster you can progress in the game. In addition to this, it also gave us a way of presenting all the meta in a nice way. So on this screen, you can see that there's a space for Saga map, there's a space for Arena, there's daily challenge at the bottom. So this pretty much helped us kind of get players understand what the end goal is, or why they're playing, what the purpose is. And from here on, it was pretty great for us. We managed to improve retention considerably, and we broke into the top 30 charts in US roughly around this time. So this time frame wise, I'm talking about Feb over here, and up until this point, we've pretty much been a client-only game. What I mean by that is everything that we've built so far, be it features, be it content, we had to do a client update, simply because this game was not built to function with a server or to have a long-term live ops. So there was a clear missing piece for us. And what we knew at that point was, if we need to keep this product successful for the long term, we need to build solid live ops capabilities. We need to engage players more. And we also need to get new mechanics into the game that will allow players to play together. So the problem that we had in mid-2000 is you played by yourself. And then what we've been addressing now is trying to get you to play with all the other fans that we have. So the goal with the clans feature that we introduced mid this year was introducing a social layer and introducing a competitive layer. So we knew that Arena was working really well. Players did compete with each other, but most of the things that they did in the game was pretty much single player driven. So mid-August, we came up with clans, and with clans, during launch, we had two sorts of events. So we had something called as a clan streak event. This was pretty much a collaborative event. So the way it worked is you set up a clan, you invite friends or like-minded people to join your clan, and then you work together towards achieving a certain point threshold. And the great thing about this is it's team effort end of the day. So if everyone plays and contributes at least 1 point, the balancing was such that you will reach to the top tier of the reward. And for people that contributed a lot more by playing levels, they got individual reward bonuses as well. What did they do when they hit play? They pretty much played a regular level and boss levels in some specific cases. So this specific event worked really well for us. We've tried 1 day, 3 day, and 5 day variations. We are still testing this quite a bit, but in terms of engagement, it's worked great for us. The next aspect, or the next logical jump, obviously was getting clans to compete against each other. And this was another feature that we introduced mid this year. And the goal with this was two clans basically play the same set of levels and try to post the highest score. And individual players get position on the leaderboard based on the score that they've gained so far. So with this, what we basically finally ended up with in our last update in December is actual global leaderboards. This has been something that we've been looking forward to right from the beginning. So during the course of the last 2 years, we've actually managed to take this game from being a single player saga driven game to a more mid-core light RPG version with a full-fledged live ops capability. Right now, we're able to run server-side events. We can tweak mechanics. We can tweak parameters related to how long an event is and what kind of rewards the players get. And a lot of stuff that we have been also doing to get to where we are is through A/B tests. So we have anywhere between 15 to 20 A/B tests that run to check either different parameters in relation to game mechanics or trying out new features. And this has worked really well for us so far. So what next? What we've realized is live ops is pretty much a marathon. So we are at a point where we managed to take this game from being a unknown title to a top grossing product. And for us to continue to stay at this level and to even do better, we actually need to create a living universe that's going to delight our fans. And it's worked for us best when we actually introduced new features, not just adding levels at the end of, say, Saga map. And that's pretty much one single takeaway that I would have for you guys if you were to kind of ask a question. So that's pretty much everything that I had. I'm open to questions from your side.
On the revenue or the number of players was after introduction of the clan system and these mutual activities and so on. I mean,
sorry, I didn't get. So you're asking about clans?
Yeah, you said that in August you introduced the clan system. When the players have some mutual activities, they compete with each other in being the top one in the clan and so on. How big impact does this did for the game?
I think for our late retention, this worked pretty good because for most players that have been engaged, so from the beginning of the game launch, we've had retention as one of the challenges, right? Because obviously, after a certain point, Saga and Daily Challenge and Arena win streak is not going to keep players engaged. What worked really well for us with clans as a feature is we were able to keep our veterans or our most loyal customers coming back. And the good thing with clans also is these players were at a point where they had progressed they are flocked to a pretty high level. So they've been engaging for over 2 years. Their birds were at a high level. They had equipped quite a few headsets. So we were able to give them meaningful things to do in the form of not just progressing further in what they have, but also showcasing their flock and the power and their skills through clan events.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, short answer, it worked really well for us.
Okay. Maybe do you have statistics for returning customers or the reduction of the leaving customers in percent after you introduce this clan system?
We actually increased. So the one metric that we've been chasing mostly with this is late retention, and that's what went up after the update.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, thanks a lot for your insight. It was really interesting to hear about these new mechanics. So my question is in terms of free-to-play games, games as services, it's really crucial to introduce new mechanics from time to time, as you have done, to keep the player interested. What is, in your opinion, the perfect interval at introducing new mechanics so that the player won't get bored, but would also not be overwhelmed by the introduction of many new mechanics? So,
I wish I knew the answer to that one. it's a tricky one, right? What we've at least seen is it depends entirely on your game and your audience. So for us, what we've done mostly is our updates have roughly a 45 to 50-day cadence. And this was not by choice. This was just the initial workflow that we had. And what we saw is that cadence worked really good for us. But now with clan events, we are throwing in events pretty much every day. So the frequency depends entirely on the engagement levels of your players. But one thing I would say is it's very important that players have a very clear objective and goal at any given point. So it's good not to introduce too many things at the same point, because then that will dilute the player's attention. And for us, what we've done mostly is when we're introducing a big feature, we've tried to keep most of the focus around that with more smaller events that have already been there in the game. So ideally avoid too many things at the same time, spread it out a bit. Cool.
Hello. It's always hard to satisfy the player. Did you meet some situations when you introduced to the game something new feature or mechanic and realized in the statistics that it was not working and you need to change something crucial?
Yeah, it does happen quite a lot. So when we run A/B tests, we do check engagement levels and we do check how the feature is performing. And I think the difficult bit is always, if you make something too easy or too engaging, it's going to take a hit on monetization. But if you make something too hard, it's going to hit engagement. So there's no golden rule or way of balancing this. You just need to see how it works best for your players. So what we do pretty much is, if you're not sure, if you're not confident about a specific feature or a change, we run a long A/B test for that. And then based on the confidence on performance in that group, we decide if we need to push this to all users or not. So ideally, we don't do a big change to our entire consumer base without seeing results through A/B tests. Did that answer your question? Okay.
I think it did. Hi. So
Hey.
one quick question. Like for each one of these rollouts that you did, and you had like 4 or 5 major updates. How many times did you get it wrong for each one before you got it right? Like how many times did you have to iterate with each one of these releases?
I think all the features that I've discussed so far, we've pretty much got it spot on in the first release. And the main reason with that, I think, is players were just looking for new things to do. So if you can imagine 2 years back when we released the game, it was pretty much a saga map with a one-track progression, right? So after 6 to 7 months, players were seeking something new, something different to do. And with each update, what we've tried to do is also not just focus on one part of the game, but different parts. So it always gave players something new or something interesting to pursue. So in our case, this worked really well. So, but it depends again entirely on how your progression vectors are in your game, and I would lean more on that. So there's no golden rule for doing this.
Right on. Thank you.
I think it's okay. Thanks a lot for your speech. Well, yeah. Thank you.
Oh.